Out of the street corners they scream. You knew it was coming. You've been waiting for this for months. Rumour hardened into fear and now they scream at you. The sirens, their hysterical wail tearing through the white noise of the city. And you run. You run to pick up those things that can never be replaced. A picture of them in the days when they still loved you. Your mother's wedding ring. And then you turn to your shelf of games. You only have room for 5. 5 games for Doomsday. 5 Games for Doomsday is a show in which board game personalities are thrust into a cabin in the woods to outrun an oncoming disaster, but can only take 5 of their games with them. But which will they choose? My guest this week is a game designer and publisher who, through his imprint Grail Games, has made his name with his relationship with Rainer Knizia. He's published Circus Flocati, Medici, Yellow and Yangtze, and the simply breathtaking Stevenson's Rocket. He's also a children's book author and former Australian Rules umpire, and with his brother Phil Walker Harding, is making a play to dominate the world of Australian gaming. My guest this week is David Harding. David, welcome to the cabin.
Wow. Thank you. What an introduction. I wish I could take some of those adjectives and carry them around with me all the time.
I shared the Google Doc with you, so you can just copy and paste. That's perfectly fine.
It's on my business card tomorrow.
And so to begin then, how difficult was it for you to pick the 5 games to take to the cabin with you?
Hard. And so basically... So Australia's a bit different from everywhere else in the world, right? We don't have zombie apocalypses. We don't have things like that. So for me to think, what am I going to take? Why am I taking it? What is a cabin in the woods? We don't have such things. So
cabin in the bush.
Yeah. So I was thinking a caravan park up the coast. What would I have to do? There's a big bushfire coming to my house. I got to escape. I got half an hour or something, and I'm going up to the coast. What am I going to take with me? At first, to be honest, I thought I'm not taking any games. And okay, so there's the end of your show right there. But
and David Harding, thank you very much.
Because seriously, in such a freaky situation, okay, kids, car, cats, food, wallet. Oh, gotta go.
Honestly, the amount of emails I've had from people who said, the world's ending. I'm not going to take any games with me. And I'm just I have to write back and say, so the proviso is all the things you really love are safe. Given that, then.
All right. And my kids? Okay. So they're in the car. They're belted in. The fire's coming. Yes. It was an interesting thing because it's not just pick your 5 favorite games because A, you have to own them for this exercise, and B, I've got to think about who else is going to be playing them. There's no point taking my top 5 games and my family's with me in the caravan because they're not going to play those games, so what was the point? So I've tried to pick games that I love to bits, but that hopefully will get played as well.
And what kind of a person are you when it comes to material possessions? Because everyone likes to say that, material possessions don't mean anything to me. And yet they seem to fill every available space with stuff. Are you someone for whom the loss of possessions would be a terrible tragedy, or would you sort of breathe out a sigh of relief that it's all gone?
I'm attached to my possessions, but I think a forced removal from them will only be a good thing. I often feel overwhelmed by my possessions, and I'm not a hoarder, but I do have too many board games, and I do have too many other things too. I admit it, and I think being forced to leave them behind will only help me. Sometimes I feel stress, Ben, stress that I have a game on the shelf that I haven't played in a year, and that's not good. That's not good for me. So often I just feel like I do have to move things on, and moving 99% of what I've got on, well, maybe that's not a bad thing.
And so how long have you lived in your current house? And do you and because I think I've lived in my current place for sort of 6 or 7 years, and I'm poor, and the amount of things I've managed to accrue is quite insane. Have you got to a point where you look around your house and you've just, by natural accretion, you have lots of stuff you probably don't need.
Wow, so I've cheated a bit in answering that question because we only moved about 6 months ago. But when we moved, there was so much junk, well, not junk, but so much stuff that I had to rent a van and do trips for a few days before even the moving truck. And when the moving truck came, I sort of apologized to the guys who were running it. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry about all this junk. And one of the guys said, if there's one thing I've learned about being a removalist, don't own many things. So we got rid of a lot of stuff in that once we got here. We're not doing that again. So we've done a few culls recently. So the house isn't that bad at the moment.
And I mean, we were talking off air about how Sydney's currently experiencing bushfires, and it's a sort of public, real demonstration of global warming in action. As an Australian, do you have a different attitude towards having stuff and disposable rubbish, or are the Australians just as feckless and decadent as the rest of us?
Yeah, I think that there's as many different people as there are different people. Like, I think some are lovers of stuff and some are not. I think we're all just like any other culture in that regard, a culture that's relatively well off.
And sort of this week when we're recording, not when the show's going out, but this week when we're recording is sort of Climate Week. In Australia, is there a greater focus, do you think, on global warming, climate change, a greater awareness of it, or is there a feeling of putting your head in the sand?
Oh, wow. So this is a board game show, right? Oh gosh, I don't know how political I want to get, but I think it's similar to a lot of countries where the majority of the people are full on, we got to do something, but not everybody who makes the decisions is on the same train as we are. Yeah, I could talk about a lot of stuff. I mean, we've got islands in the Pacific and island nations, knocking on our door saying, hey, when we go under, like literally, you're going to give us a place, right? Because you're one of the biggest polluters. Yeah, you're going to give us a home. And I don't know if that's going to happen with our history of refugees. So I don't know. I can't compare us to other countries, but there's some people ready to move and make this place hopefully more sustainable, and others who are just happy doing it the old way.
So I want to go back to the beginning then, and I want to talk something about. We'll get onto board games at some point, but there was something that really stuck out in the bio you sent me, and that was you said you were an Aussie Rules umpire. So firstly, why an umpire and not a player?
Okay, so Australian football or footy or Aussie Rules, it's our biggest spectator sport in Australia. But where I live in Sydney, it's like the one place left that's sort of still trying to rebel against its overall domination of the sporting market. So while I grew up fully knowing AFL, Aussie Rules, and I did watch it on TV, it was not my number one love as a kid. I think sport-wise, cricket was definitely my number one love. I was addicted to it. So it wasn't until I was older, met somebody who was an umpire, that I decided to follow that path or give it a go.
And to what standard were you umpiring?
The best standard. No. So I made it to first grade in our state competition. I don't know if these terms mean anything to other people. And I trialled for the top competition, the professional league, a couple of times. Didn't quite make it. So I was quite up there. I did a couple of grand finals in New South Wales. I did it for about 12 years.
And is this a professional gig? Did you get paid for it? Is it all purely amateur?
I got paid for it, and wow. I didn't get rich off it. But the people that do it, the top flight umpires, it's basically their job. And it has to be. You're an athlete. It's very professional. it's something you have to commit your life to while you're doing it. It's very demanding. It's not like, no offense to anyone, I'm not bagging anyone out, but it's not like soccer umpiring. Like I do 14, 15 Ks in a game, and it's very demanding running, backwards, forwards, pivoting, sprinting. It's full on.
Well, it's fortunate that football doesn't have umpires, it has referees, so that statement doesn't mean... Yeah, exactly. But you said in your bio that umpiring Aussie Rules largely made you the person you are today. What does that mean? What did it give you?
Oh, I'm going to get a bit wussy. I don't know if that's the word. A bit emotional.
Sentimental.
A bit sentimental. So, okay, it gave me a feeling of self-worth. Wow, that was a big statement. Can't believe that came out, but it did. It gave me a feeling of accomplishment. It gave me a feeling that I could do something I didn't think I could do. It taught me to achieve at a high standard week after week. But the most important thing it did, two things really important that it did overall. One, it gave me a super thick skin, super thick. When you've got players and crowd swearing their head off at you, it doesn't teach you anything but to have a thick skin and to not take things personal, but which is very important for board gaming. That's coming soon, folks. But the other thing that it really did for me was it made me fit. So before this, I was a large 100+ kilogram sweaty, roly-poly thing. And it transformed me into quite a virile, beautiful specimen of humanity. And but it made me fit.
So that's been born out.
It made me fit. Like I got really super fit. I was such an athlete, and I was so just proud of myself for that. I'd never achieved. I thought I was just going to be this gross thing forever. But it really taught me to look after myself. See, I was sentimental. Look after myself, treat myself right, how to eat, how to, prepare for a game is, it's a big thing. Took over everything, really.
And so why stop then?
Kids. So I remember I had a game at Wollongong. Sorry, that's about an hour and a bit south. And I was driving home late at night after this. These games are full on. Really, you feel like you've achieved something just walking off the field and you're not dead. And I'm driving home, and I was like a television commercial for rest every 2 hours sort of thing. I was falling asleep at the wheel, and it was quite scary on the highways. I was regularly doing it. And I realized it's because I'm not getting enough sleep at nights, having 2 young kids at the time. I couldn't run well enough. And if I did, I was going to kill myself. I started having, I don't want to say not heart issues, but my heart couldn't keep up. I wasn't able to perform. So I took about 2-3 years off. They grew up a bit. I got a bit more sleep at night. I went back for a couple of years. I achieved again. And then I realized, okay, I think I'm done. I don't know. Just stopped after that. See, Ben, that was a rambly answer. You might want to, I don't know.
No, it was lovely. People are going to cry. So you said in your bio that, you primarily played video games growing up, but then a copy of Catan changed your life. How did Catan change your life?
Did I say that? It changed my life. Everything's changing my life. Umpiring, kids, Catan. What a list. That's on my grave. So I did play board games all the way through my childhood, though. My family had a great stash of games. They were mass market games. Whenever I went to someone's house, I wanted to know what games they had. I was big on board games, really big. But video games was definitely my number one thing. As soon as I played Super Mario Brothers, I was like, wow, this is amazing. That changed my life, Ben. Super Mario Brothers changed my life.
Which Super Mario Brothers? The first one?
The original Super Mario Brothers with Duck Hunt on the same cartridge. But my brother actually brought Catan over. I think it was 2005, maybe somewhere around there, '05. For my birthday. It was my birthday. I never do anything for my birthday, but my family came over for lunch or something, and he brought Catan. He's like, "Oh, I got this new game." Apparently, he'd been introduced to new games, and it blew me away. It just blew me away. I was sitting there, my jaw literally was open the whole time. Someone that had grown up on a lot of board games, Catan felt like, okay, this sounds a bit weird at first, Monopoly 2.0 to me, because I rolled 2 dice every turn, but I didn't move with the dice. I got stuff, and I was like, whoa, amazing. It had a variable board each time. Whoa, amazing. There was negotiation in it, but it was much smoother, made more sense. You know, trading was obvious how it worked. There was hotels and houses in it, but they earned me points, not money. It was just like, whoa, I got it, I grokked it. It reminded me of like those sort of tech tree building video games like Warcraft, where you could upgrade your stuff. I mean, it was only a level or two to get from a settlement to a city, but I got it. And it just blew me away. And I think the next week he brought Carcassonne. I was like, whoa, what is this? This is a puzzle that we're all building together. Who would have thought that was a thing? And my life just exploded. So I'd always played board games, but it was about '05, Catan and Carcassonne. Oh man, I just became, I don't know, a hobby gamer, whatever you want to call that. Love those games.
And so how difficult was it at that time to get hold of games in Australia? Because, I mean, we were talking before, and you said even now it's difficult. So in 2005, was it next to impossible?
You'd have to ask my brother, because I just mooched off of him. So he brought all the games every week, and I played them. There was and still is a board game shop in the city here, and that's where I got my Catan, because I wanted to own it. And I remember going in, the first game I bought that my brother didn't have was Ticket to Ride, and I bought it special. That's how I found Board Game Geek. It's a famous website for those of you that don't know about the board game industry. And I researched what's one of the great games that's not too long, easy to learn, that my brother doesn't have, and it was Ticket to Ride. I went in there and bought it. So if it was in that one shop, fine. But other than that, I wasn't really a buyer at that time, so I couldn't tell you. But I think it was probably hard.
And, you know, you played with your brother, and both you and your brother have entered the board game industry. Was there an active game scene in Sydney at that time, or was it just you and your brother playing games?
Again, ask my brother. I don't know if there was a scene or not. And if there was a scene, I wouldn't have been hip enough to be in it anyway. I just played with him and my cousin mostly. He played with other people. I know he played with another famous. So my brother's name is Philip Walker Harding. He's a designer, but he played with this guy Matthew Dunstan, who's also a well-known designer now. And
guest of the cabin too.
Yeah, right. He's in Europe near you, probably.
Yeah.
Anyway, easier to call than me. But so there was a scene for my brother probably, but for me, not so much. And even today, like, Australia is, you know, I looked this up because I did some research, because I consider your show worthy of attention and research and work.
One of the few, thank you.
That Australia's approximately the size, to help people out, of the continental United States, but it's got the population of about the state of Florida across it. And most of those people are in a few centres. But even my centre, Sydney, which is the biggest of, say, 4 or 5 million people, there's no board game cafe here. There's a few board game shops, sure, but they're mostly Magic centred. So scene, if you want a game, if you want to find a group, you'll find a group. There's groups. But scene, don't know. Sydney doesn't really have huge conventions or cafes or shops. It's just something that happens on the side. Heck, we've got the Opera House and the beaches, right? So I don't know if people are keen on games as everywhere else.
So your first game then is, I guess, a mass market game, but it seems to me a sort of work of satire on the notion of board games in general. This is the Mad Magazine game. So firstly, why are you taking this to the caravan park on the Gold Coast?
Do you know this was the easiest game to choose to take, the Mad Magazine game. And it's not a joke, it's serious. This would be the first thing I'd take. And it's sentimental reasons, mostly. And you were talking about possessions before. I don't see what's wrong with being attached to a possession from your childhood. I would take this first. I'd love to play it in the cabin, but it's mostly so it didn't get burnt up. The Mad Magazine game is supremely important to me. It changed my life, Ben.
I mean, your life has taken many, many different directions. That's safe to say.
Shall I tell you why it's important to me?
Yes, please.
I guess that's why I'm here. Hey, okay. Get the tissues out again. I think I had a good relationship with my parents as a kid, really good. But when I turned about 14, I realized everything that was wrong in my life was their fault. And since then, perhaps I haven't been the best son in the world. Perhaps I've fallen short in many ways. But there's one thing that I'll always have from my dad, and that's a sense of humor. Growing up, he taught me how to laugh. He taught me what was funny. He said, in a way, the Mad Magazine is a funny thing. Monty Python, that's a funny thing. Charlie Chaplin, that's a funny thing. I guess it's sort of like what I learned from him, if anything, is the world can stink, life can be a joke, but life can be funny as well, can be fun. And for some reason, my dad somehow had a massive collection of 1960s, 70s Mad magazines. I don't know how he just bought them, but in Australia, weird. And if you know him, you'd also think that's very unlike you to have such a satirical, anti-establishment thing. And I used to go into the study and just pull them down these 60s, 70s magazines, laugh myself silly, fall in love with the art, the jokes. I know more about Spiro Agnew than most people in America. It shaped my worldview, even though it was 20 or more years in the past. It affected me. And the Mad Magazine game was a game that I could play. And I don't know if you had these when you were a kid, but these moments where you laughed so hard you couldn't breathe and you couldn't stop. And it just escalated and escalated, and you're laughing your head off, and you're also, am I dying here? Am I going to come down off this? And the Mad Magazine game did that for me. It's just, yes, it's a Monopoly ripoff, but it's not a Monopoly knockoff. It knows what it's doing. It's poking fun at the Monopoly establishment. The cards in that game still crack me up. Like, there's this deck of cards you draw in the game that direct you to do stuff like pick up money, go to this space, boring stuff. But there's things in there that are absolutely surreal, like, I don't know, like this card can only be played on Friday. And that's all it says. If you like this game, like there's a card like, if you like this game, cross your legs, sit on your hands, cackle like a chicken, and lose 1 egg. But there's no eggs in the game. It's just like, so you can't wait to see what card you're going to draw next. There's even a card, something like act like a rock. If the other players think you're a good rock, win a rock. So we went outside, found a rock, and put it in the game so that you could always actually win that rock in the game. It's just, I can't explain it. It's stupid, but I love it. And it actually really influenced my brother and my early board game designs, believe it or not. We started designing spoof Monopoly games too.
And, I mean, do you think there's a dearth of humour in games? Are there any games that have come close to doing what this does in terms of being funny ever since?
I think a lot of games produce funny situations. There's a lot of party games that crack me up, you know. When I play a game, even something like Dixit, when I play that with the same people over and over, you get in-jokes going. It's hilarious. But the game itself, you're right, isn't funny. I think actually, to be honest, most board games take themselves way too seriously. And maybe that's a reaction against mass market. I mean, when you got a game that is apparently funny because it's shooting water from a pretend toilet into your face, I think hobby board games are trying to do something different intrinsically than what people are used to who have only shopped at those sorts of shops. But you're right. Why can't more games be funny in and of themselves? I don't know. Maybe because it's hard to do.
So I want to go on then and talk about you as a designer and you as a publisher. So you said you started designing Monopoly knockoffs with your brother. When did you start thinking, I'm actually going to design a proper game that people can play?
So my brother and I, in our childhood, as I said, we played a lot of board games and card games, and we designed a lot. This is before the internet, when there was very little to do, so we would actually make stuff to do. So we'd make basically copies of Top Trumps, copies of Monopoly, but in our own stupid, silly, funny way. I remember we even learnt BASIC so that we could make copies of video games like Tetris and Street Fighter and stuff. So we wanted to create. I think we were people that wanted to make stuff. But I didn't think about designing a game for other people outside of our circle till he started doing it successfully. So he started bringing these designs to our gaming time that I always thought were really great. And then some of them started getting picked up and published. And it made me want to try, but it also made me sort of like a Ringo Starr thing. You got Lennon and McCartney over there writing these hits. I can't really bring something to the table till it's at least as good in my head as that stuff. So Philip started properly designing 06, 07, and I was probably 5-6 years after that. I was designing, but it was nothing that went anywhere.
And do you think you both had a sort of natural aptitude? Because when I think about designing a game, and because every gamer has, I'm sure, I think about it for sort of 30 seconds and then go, I just don't have the brain configuration for that. Were you both sort of naturally good?
He's not naturally good at anything, but no, seriously, he's all right. But something, we might talk about this later, but before designing board games and during it, I wrote a lot of books. And the one tip I gave to people, because a lot of people would say, I want to write books, I want to be an author. The one thing that makes you an author compared to that person who wants to be an author is that you've actually written something. I think everyone gets those ideas of a game that you say, as you say, sit there for a little bit, then float away. The difference is you have to get down and make it and just do it. Don't keep it as an idea, but just have that little bit of fire under your chin, is that a saying? To then take that idea and make it real. Everyone has an idea, but very few people actually make it real. And if it wasn't for those people that make things real, well, we wouldn't have much of what we've got today, Ben.
I mean, what do you think to the whole 10,000 hours thing? Does that hold credence, or, you know, it's that Malcolm Gladwell concept that to become truly good at something, you need to have done it for 10,000 hours. And, you know, so I guess the question I'm asking is, was there a lot of trial and error, a lot of failure, a lot of awful stuff you made before you made stuff that was good?
10,000 hours, crikey, I'm not doing that, but I don't know if that's true. But yeah, you do have drafts. I mean, even William Shakespeare would have had drafts. What you see in the end is not the first idea. And that's part of the problem. So making that first idea a prototype is the first major step. But the second major step, which is exponentially bigger, is to then fix the problems, edit, proofread, draft. That's where, so if 10% of people have an idea for a board game actually make one, then it's only 1% of those 10, and I'm making up these figures, that then make the second prototype and keep pushing. And to be honest, what I do, or what I did and do now, is I try and make sure before I show anyone this potential design that it's already been edited as far as I can take it, so that we're not wasting any time and I know it's already somewhat along the road. And if I can't get it somewhere along the road off my own bat, then just don't worry about it. I will say not everybody has to be a designer. I don't want people to think this is something everyone needs to do, but I felt like something that I wanted to do it, so I did it.
And so was Grail Games started initially to publish your own work?
Oh, no, I hate my own games. You didn't ask me if I liked what I did. But the reason why a lot of my first games were my designs was because I felt I had to cut my teeth. So I didn't feel comfortable going to a designer or a publisher and saying, could I sign your game or license your game, when I didn't have a track record. And so I started with my games, firstly to get a track record, but also so that if I stuffed up, I wasn't hurting anyone else's baby. I learnt the craft with my designs. And that's not saying I thought my designs were subpar, but even though I've kept designing since 5 years ago or more than that, when my first game started coming out, I think 11's was 6 years ago now. Even though I've kept designing, now I'm in the situation where it's a bit hard to say, sorry, Rainer Knizia, that game you gave me is pretty good, but I'm going to put out one of mine instead. It's a bit hard now the other way. So now I've got a whole backlog of games, but trying to find the time to make them happen is difficult for different reasons now.
And so you mentioned his name. How did the relationship with Rainer Knizia start?
We met at a party. He was wearing a strapless gown, and I don't know if we had a relationship with Rainer Knizia. I guess we get a relationship, but not that type of relationship. We met because I emailed him. I just emailed out of the blue. But as I said, I made sure I had a track record so I could say, I'm from Grail Games. We have done this, this, and this. I also was very honest and open, and I said, I love your stuff. These are the 3 games. I gave him 3 of yours that I believe are currently out of print, and I would love to be considered as a potential partner to bring these games back into the world, keeping in mind I'm small, and this is, well, not literally, but the company's small, and this is what I can do. And they said, okay.
And what were those 3 games?
Circus. Okay, so I knew from the beginning of Grail Games, we're sort of jumping ahead, but I knew from the beginning I wanted to do Medici. I considered that as a great potential for Grail Games because of what I wanted to do with the company, and because it wasn't overly big. It was something that people have been crying out for a new edition of. So I had Medici in there, but I had Circus Flaccati as well, because I knew I wanted to start with a card game from him to sort of show myself and him that I could do something, because it's simple to produce just a simple card game. So I had Circus Flaccati, Medici, and the third one was I forget, but I could
Stevenson's Rocket?
That was a bit later. But whatever the third one was, I didn't do it in the end. Forgive me. I didn't do my research, even though I do love your show.
And so, I mean, what is the what is the difficulty of approaching someone, I mean, who's kind of up there with the legendary designers? Is it difficult to negotiate publishing a game from him? Or is he very much, well, this is out of print, why not?
I lucked out because Reiner Knizia loves working with smaller designers, publishers. He's got his relationships with the big guys and girls, so he's cool there. But he has said that he loves working with smaller publishers because he believes they do a good job by his designs, because if they don't, their company's in trouble. They're also easier to work with, which I can see as well. You're only talking to one person maybe, not 16 people. So I lucked out there. But I think because I was such a fan, he knew I wasn't just talking about, I wasn't saying, oh, I've heard of you. You apparently do good games. Give me one. I want to make money. I was coming at it from, this would be such an awesome opportunity. I would be so flattered if you would work with me. I didn't say it quite as suck-uppy as that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he could tell, I'd like to think that I was keen.
And so is this the main thrust of Grail Games now? These Reiner Knizia games? Because I got an email about your upcoming Kickstarters, and it's the Medici dice game, I think. Is it not?
Is that the thrust? So shall I tell you what my initial theory behind the company was?
Yeah.
So it's called Grail Games for a reason. Obviously, the point was to bring games that were hard to find to market. I didn't want, it was, picture this if you can. It's 2013. Kickstarter is about to launch in Australia. And I thought, there's hundreds and hundreds of people who are going to jump on this. So I want to be there at the beginning. I'd learnt from my brother how games were published. I'd worked with him on 11s as he actually produced the first edition of that. I learned a lot through him. I got relationships going with distributors, blah, blah, blah. I set up the company. But my point was not to compete directly with a Fantasy Flight or a GMT or a pick your favorite bigger publisher, put it in there. I wanted to do something that was particular and niche and not necessarily going to put me up against the big guys right away. So I wanted to make games I would buy. There were heaps of companies making games that I didn't want to buy, but I wanted to make games that I wanted, so at least I'd be happy with what I was doing. And that meant reprinting games that I loved, that I felt had been forgotten, and trying to bring games from Asia, because I was quite close to Asia, into the English-speaking market. And that's how it started. Unfortunately, many other companies had the same idea about Asia as I did, so suddenly Tokyo Game Fair and all that was swarmed with Western publishers, so that became a bit tricky. But the reprints is where I sort of got a name, specifically with Reiner Knizia and Vincent Dutrait collaborations with Medici Card Game, King's Road, I don't know, there's like 5, 6, 7 of them. And once you get a relationship going with these people, there's no reason to burn that bridge. So when Dr. Knizia starts sending you designs and possible projects to work on, I take it seriously. And because I can only put out 5, 6 games a year, there's quite a lot that are from him because they're so good, I think. But as soon as he starts not sending me stuff, well, you'll start seeing some second-rate David Harding game.
And so what's the challenges of being an Australian publisher? What kind of problems do you come across that probably publishers in Europe or America don't?
Well, I talked before about the scene. There's not really a scene here. There's not really publishers here. There's not really conventions here. So we've got PAX Australia, but that's definitely video game centric. We've got a pretty big one in Canberra once a year called CanCon, but that's not really retail publisher focus. It's more playing games focused. So when I first started, I was shipping all these games over and, I sold some through shops, but they just sat in my garage. There's not really the same level of people buying games here is in America and Europe. And that, I'm not knocking Australia. Please, I love you guys. I love us. We're the best. But we're not great at buying games en masse. So I've totally stopped bringing games here. Unfortunately, Australian shops, as much as I've built up relationships with them, have to get them from America, Grail Games now. It's just too hard. The shipping costs are so prohibitive. And then when you get them here, you only sell a few copies. So it's just sad. But I thought it would be harder than it was in some ways. I was able to get a line going and a name going, thank goodness, quite quickly. So I do have some market recognition. But for the average person just using Kickstarter, and of course there are many doing that, it's so hard now to rise above the massive things. I mean, I saw in 2013, 2014 when I started Grail Games that this was coming, this wave, and I wanted to get on a surfboard before it was too late. I really saw that about to happen, and it did.
So your next game then is Kingdom Builder, and this is a Spiel des Jahres winner. Do you think it's deserving of being a Spiel des Jahres winner?
No, it's crap. I don't know why I'm taking it, to be honest. No, I love it. It's probably my favorite game. I mean, it's hard for me to say something is my favorite thing, but this is as close as I'm going to get to calling something my favorite game. I'm cheating a bit because I've got the big box with every expansion and promo and stuff in it. But this is where it's at, people. Kingdom Builder is the best.
Why? Because I played it once and I was underwhelmed.
There's something wrong with you then.
I mean, that is clearly true.
No, look, it's not for everyone. But I think, okay, I'll tell you why I like it. Then you can see if it's my problem. I love the variability. Every game feels very different just because of a few different map rotations and putting togethers and a few different scoring endgame goals. Totally changes it. I love how simple it is. Draw a card, put down a thing. Done. Next. I just think, though, that somehow in this, I love games that do a lot with a little, and this sure does a lot with a little. I think the puzzle of Kingdom Builder is just the bomb. That's what the cool kids say, right? Or is it da bomb? I think it's just awesome. You have to set yourself up in Kingdom Builder so that when you draw the card that tells you what terrain you will be building on next, that is okay. You have to set yourself up so that no matter what card you draw, you're going to be okay. It's about mitigating problems, mitigating disaster. It's a game that you get better at the more you play. The first time I played, I thought, well, this is random. How can I ever plan ahead? How can I ever make sure I put myself in a situation so when I draw those stupid flowers, I can put things in the flowers and not be screwed? But once you figure out the subtle sort of what the game rewards you for doing, suddenly everything is an opportunity, not a barrier. I realize I just sounded really stupid, really arty-farty, but I don't know. It just sings for me.
And so to what degree, how important do you think Donald X. Vaccarino is to the modern hobby gaming world?
Well, he'll always be the guy that designed Dominion, but you know what? I wish I was that guy. So he basically designed a whole genre. I think he must be a genius. I don't know. I've never met him. I prefer Kingdom Builder, but that's just me. I think he's designed two Spiel des Jahres winners. There's something going on there. They're both actually, I heard a rumor that Kingdom Builder's design process began with him saying, how can I design Dominion, the board game? And while Kingdom Builder is nothing like Dominion, you can see something in there if you play it. There's a lot of variety. The different board layouts and cards are like the different sets in Dominion. It works totally differently. But he's someone that's really good at taking simple rules and adding infinite variability. So every time you sit down and play, you're getting something slightly different.
So I want to go on then and talk about your writing, because you said that you've published 16 children's books. So, kind of, what are the children's books about, and sort of how long have you been writing, and when did you realise that you had an aptitude for it?
So just like designing board games, I've always written stories. I've always loved words, English anyway. I guess it's something I wanted to be, maybe, as a professional author. I love reading. Reading has always been with me. I can distinctly remember when I was 5, I would have been 4 at that time. I started quite young, kindergarten. This is a bit weird, this story. You might want to edit it out just because I don't know where I'm going with this. But I remember sitting on the floor in kindergarten. The teacher had this sort of fuzzy felt board and was sticking letters onto it. And I remember she had a C and an A and a T. This is how I remember it. Maybe I'm wrong. And she went like at and cat. And I remember like a light bulb moment of, oh, I get it. And I could click. I could just read. And it would have been a few days after that, I think, and I could be totally wrong on that, but very soon after that, my parents drove me and my brother to my uncle. He'd just gotten married to my auntie, and I distinctly remember this. In the car on the way to their place, suddenly I realized I could read everything around me, and I was reading these shop signs and the street signs. I could just do it, and my parents were just stunned that I could just suddenly read everything. And I was reading novels at 5, and something about words has just always clicked with me. So I've always written. I'd always, as an older person, 20s, I'd written things and submitted them to publishers and never gotten anything back. I did a how to write children's books correspondence course, and that was great and fun, but it didn't lead anywhere. And then my cousin, who I mentioned before as being someone I play games with, somehow he met someone, blah, 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 blah. He started writing kids' books, and he put my name forward to this publisher because they wanted more authors for a kids' series. They said to me, yeah, we'll think of using you. Please do a draft story in this series and show us what you got. So I was so keen. My wife and I went on a weekend away to the Blue Mountains, which is near here, and I just sat in the hotel and wrote this book over a weekend, typed it up when I got home, and they loved it. They couldn't publish it because they were already doing a book in the series with a similar story, but they're like, right, you're writing 2 of these books, and then that led to another job, and then that led to another job and a job over at this publisher. And yes, I've written 16 books that have been published, but I reckon 12 of them don't have my name on the cover. So I started, as many people do, as a ghostwriter. I hate to say it. I don't want to break people's dreams and their childhoods, but most of those book series that you read as a kid, they had one author's name on the cover, but they actually were written by many different people. And I was one of those people. That's how I started.
And without wanting to be crass, kind of what's the money there? So you said, when someone says I've published 16 books, I think, wow, then you must have made good money doing it. Did you make good money doing it, or is there not a lot of money in the children's book world?
Well, when Stephen King publishes 16 books, there's a lot of money in it. But when I do it, now the problem when you're doing ghostwriting is you're a bit of a hack, you're a bit of a freelancer. You don't have a lot of say in your contract. Some of these stories were just getting some money up front, no royalties. That's how they make money nowadays in the book industry sometimes. And I didn't care. I still made quite a lot up front, but it's not that income that's coming in all the time. Some of the books do make royalties still. I probably get I don't know, $3,000 a year from it. But again, it's not sending your kids to Oxford and Cambridge.
And so, you were a children's book author, you dealt with publishing. Is the publishing of books and the publishing of board games similar in any way? Did you learn anything from that experience that you brought into Grail Games?
So similar. I mean, different but similar, and similar but different. And different but similar as well. So the one thing it taught me, I think more than anything else, is how to respectfully treat a designer of a game. Because when I submit a manuscript and it gets edited to death, some editors are very nice and helpful, and others just you feel like they've taken your heart out and chewed it up. So it's taught me how to respect the creative person in the process, I think, and I know what it's like to be at that end. And it's also similar to designing, because for me anyway, when I write a book, I can't just sit down and just start writing and then in a few weeks or months have a finished novel. I need to give myself a brief or a guide of where I'm going, or it's just too open. And it's the same for me with game design. I have to say, I want a game that'll work for 2 to 4 players, be no more than an hour, and have this in it and be this setting, something like that. And then I can go. So writing and designing are very similar for me, very similar. As far as publishing, the numbers are different, the procedures are different, the processes are different, but the sort of starting with a prototype and ending with a product in the shops, that sort of arc is identical in many ways. You got to think about the end product from the beginning. I just learned so much from book publishing. Yes, they are very similar.
So your next game then is a big one. It's a big dead one at this point, and this is Android Netrunner. And is this the best CCG stroke LCG out there that a lot of people say it is?
It's my favorite. So I said at the beginning that I would only take games on this expedition away from death to the woods or whatever it's called with games that other people would play with me. I admit this sort of breaks that a bit. But my thinking was, if I'm going to be stuck in one room with the same people for months and months and years, eventually we're going to get so bored that this could be the game that we learn together and just find out all the intricacies of it together. I think Android Netrunner is an amazing design. It is just thrilling to play, in my opinion. It's not a card. It's different to other CCGs like Magic, because there's this whole bluff thing going on and double think and outthinking your opponent. You're not exactly sure what they're doing and you have to sort of deduce it. It's very strong thematically, I think. I'm worried about the CCG LCG model. I think CCG is full for sure. I think Fantasy Flight, who run the LCG system, have obviously realized it has its limits. They're putting games in and out of rotation quite regularly now, and I've noticed that now they're really pumping the co-op style of things, because it's really hard to promote competition and tournaments. So it is a dead game, you're right. But I think with all the cards I've got, I could still play it for years and years and years if I wanted to. In fact, to be honest, this game almost killed Grail Games, because it got to a point I was so in love with this one game as a gamer, as a player, watching YouTube shows, listening to podcasts dedicated to it, reading through deck lists, just addicted to this one game, that I had to decide, is this going to be my hobby? Is Android Netrunner the thing that I do, or is it all games? And I had to choose all games at the end. But it's all consuming. It's that type of game, but I think it's brilliant as well.
And so, I mean, do you think that Android Netrunner will continue to have a life? If it's predicated on this LCG model, and so people get into it. And as you say, there are so many cards out there that it's, if you were to buy a deck builder with that many cards, it's the kind of thing you could then play forever. But when a publisher stops supporting a game like this, does it just die?
Firstly, Andrew Netrunner, that's a great name for a character in a book.
Yeah.
Second, you said that, I think. Andrew Netrunner, that's awesome. That is like a sci-fi futuristic. Andrew Netrunner. All right. Anyway, what was the question? Oh, when publishers kill a game. Yeah, I was lucky because I got in at pretty much the start of Netrunner, so it was easy for me to get all the cards. If I had started a year later, I wouldn't have bothered. I couldn't have caught up to it because I didn't have a place I could go and play it every week, twice a week to catch up on what's already happened. Because it is a game that grows and you'll do better and evolves, and you'll do better if you've known where the game's come from and sort of see where it's going. They call it like the meta. If you know what the community is doing with the game, you'll do better. But if you're just going to play it casually, it doesn't matter. You can just have the core box set and just play that. There's enough there. It's just if you want to take it further than that. And now that Fantasy Flight has made the decision for me, it isn't going any further, I can sort of just relax and play it if I wanted to. I don't have to be stressed about what's the next cards? Do I have to change my deck? Where am I going to go to play that? It is sad. I mean, I guess it was sad when they stopped it, but I just moved on. I had already moved on, really. But if that had been my only thing that was my hobby, Netrunner was my hobby, I would have felt empty for a while, I'm pretty sure.
So I want to talk to you now about being a publisher in the world of Kickstarter. So, first of all, is Grail Games possible without Kickstarter? Could you have done anything that you've done without it?
I couldn't have started. I guess that's the answer. I knew I needed it at the beginning, but now it's a bit different. In fact, I think I've put out 21 games, and I think only 15 Kickstarters, and 2 of them failed, so 13 of 20 or 21 have been Kickstarted. The problem is that even though I could afford to do, like last year, I think 2018, yes, that was last year, I did Crisscross without Kickstarter, Kashgar, the English edition, without Kickstarter, Yellow and Yangtze without Kickstarter. I could do it, but what happened was 2 of those 3 games were really late. The factory sat on it, took forever, and I didn't have the cash flow to be okay with that, and things fell in a heap. So I thought I'd gotten to the point where I didn't need Kickstarter anymore. I'm sort of someone who thinks, Kickstarter was started for a reason, and I was trying to be that thing. But then, hang on a minute, it's not as easy as I thought, and I did have to go back to Kickstarter.
So I was speaking to people at Essen, and we were talking about the board game world and the industry currently. And someone said to me that there is a lot of talk at the moment, basically since Asmodee has bought everything, that Kickstarter has become even more necessary as the only sort of effective way to ensure that you sell games now. So you see a lot of established companies who've never used Kickstarter entering the Kickstarter world. Do you think Kickstarter is more necessary now than ever for publishers to ensure they sell at least a few thousand copies of their games?
Yes, but I don't think that's Asmodee's fault. I think it's the fault. I think it's a symptom of the fact of Kickstarter itself, that now we've got thousands of games coming out every year. And the thing that Kickstarter does is it gives you some marketing. It gives you a chance to gauge buzz for your game. It gives you a chance to sell some up front, because there is so many games. I don't blame distributors and retailers for this, but there's so many games, they can't sell them, they can't promote them, they can't put them on the shelves. I mean, gone is the time when someone could say, here are our 10 new games this month, how many do you want? Now a shop's being told, here's our hundreds of games, what do you want? And they're going, well, I can fit like 10 more on a shelf, I'll take one of that and one of that. And nothing else sells in bulk anymore unless you're one of the big people. Unfortunately, I think the traditional distribution model has to, I don't know if reinvent themselves is the right word, but it's going to have to work harder to sell more copies at retail because it's crowded. It's a mess. People don't know what they want. People don't know what's out there. That's general. Many people do know, but the average person, it's just too much. You're just going to buy what there is there, and it's harder for a shop to know what to have there. So people are trying to find other ways to get their products known, and Kickstarter has proven to be one of those ways that works.
So your next game then is The Game. Firstly, how awful is this game's name?
In English, it's bad.
It's called The Game in German too.
So maybe, is that better? Because in a German search engine that might come up, but in an English one it won't. I think it's but see, I feel that, I mean, I don't buy games because of their name, to be honest. But yeah, you could have given it any name. There's no theme or setting here.
And so what is it about this game? Do you think this is a game that facilitates great player interaction?
I said before, if you didn't edit it out, about how when I was a kid, I loved those moments of just laughing my head off, and that some games do give you that sense. And for me, The Game has done that. I think it's hilarious because we can't talk. We're all trying to solve this goal of putting cards 1 to 100 and 100 to 1 down on the table, but we can't talk. So like when people make a mistake, it's so funny, I think. And when people do it right, it's like, wow, bang, 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 that was so cool. It's a game that wowed me from the start, mostly because it was a game that made me go, why didn't I think of that? I love card games. I love little card games. I mean, Amigo used to be the only place I would go to for these great little card games, but NSV now, who puts out The Game, is right up there with them. It blows me away. I've played it 40, 50 times. I love it. Most people I've played it with are happy to play it, but it's not their go-to co-op game. For me, it is, and it would definitely go with me. Like when a zombie's chasing me, I'll try and put the game in my pocket because it's great with players, but I can play it solo as well. I just think it's really clever, really simple, and a challenge. I just think it's really clever.
And so do you think this game has been rather superseded by The Mind in recent years?
I think that the designer of The Mind probably played the game. It clearly is sort of a step up from that, but that's cool. I mean, that's how all design works. We all take in ideas from everywhere and make it our own thing. But whereas The Mind also blew me away, I mean, I just read the rules. I think NSV posted the rules before Essen the year it came out, The Mind. And I just read it. I hadn't played it, nothing. And I was like, whoa, I got to get in on this. This is different. And I contacted them to publish it, and it didn't work out. But I could tell right away that this was going to be like The Game and just be amazing in its simple way. For me, The Game has had more staying power just because I've found it more accessible to more people. I think that's just my experience. I think there are probably people out there that are going to play The Mind till they're 80, and I love The Mind, but I think for me The Game is more like a game. So it's sort of easier for people who might not normally play this stuff to get into it and get it.
So I want to go on now and talk about the future for you. So Grail Games has recently been acquired. So firstly, who acquired you and what was the process behind it?
So yeah, it has been. So basically at Gen Con 2018, I had a meeting with Arnaud Charpentier, who is the owner of Matago, and he's got a number of, I guess you'd call them publishers under his umbrella now, his company's bigger umbrella. And he was talking to me at Gen Con about the possibility of setting up sort of Matago Australia, or having someone in Australia on the ground to help with the distribution of Matago stuff. And that's what we were talking about. But the more we chatted online after Gen Con, we sort of realized we were kindred gaming spirits, and the ideas sort of changed about how we could work together. And so this group that includes Matago, Colossal Games, Maple Games, Bombix, Surfing Meeple, now also has Grail Games in there as well. The process was relatively easy, but it took a long time. In fact, I haven't put out anything this year, 2019, except for things that were already printed in 2018 that hadn't come out yet. 2019 has basically been behind the scenes year, but there's heaps coming. It's been amazing, to be honest. The change for me personally, it's changed my life, man.
And so, what has been the change to your day-to-day work, and what sort of level of autonomy will you retain within this group?
So Grail Games it's in one way it's business as usual. I'm still the guy that picks the games and develops the games and gets the art for the games. But I'm now also doing that for the other studios as well when a game fits my style or when I find the game, but it doesn't fit with the Grail line. So Grail's line has become more defined. These are the games that Grail Games will do, but I will help to put out or develop games for the other studios. But I'm still the Grail Games guy. I still run that sort of thing. But my job is now more about development and project management, I guess, than I don't have to do marketing anymore. I don't have to do the fulfillment anymore. I mean, I still write the updates for Kickstarter campaigns, but I don't have to answer every single comment anymore because I'm asleep. There's more people, and that's why you're seeing, I think, a lot of groups getting together. I mean, Asmodee is the well-known one, but there's many, many publishers joining forces now because you can use the same personnel across other lines, so you save money. You can publish things together, so you save money. But you keep that name that's been built over years from that studio when you join up with it. So you have another sort of section of the community, another group of customers, I guess, forgive me for using the word gamers, that you can now cater to as part of the bigger group. So it's better for everyone on this side of it. I hope nothing really changes on the other side, the gamer side.
And so what's coming from Grail Games in the future? What can we expect if 2019's been a backstage year? What's coming now that you're stepping in front of the curtain?
Yeah, right. So I guess so Grail Games was all about reprints, and we're going to try and bring that to the fore again, but also produce games that feel like they're remakes, but really they're not. So Medici the dice game you mentioned. There's also a new Medici game that will hopefully at least kickstart in 2020. Sort of like what Yellow and Yangtze was to Tigris and Euphrates. This is sort of Medici 2. Also another Knizia game that hasn't got a name yet. A bigger board game. But some other games too. So a remake of Safranito, which was a dexterity / Euro game from a few years ago. And some other things in the works too. It's pretty cool. So they're the games I would have picked anyway, but now I don't have to sign the checks.
And so You mentioned to me, I think it was off air, that you're a teacher. When do you become a full-time professional in the board game world, or do you think that won't happen?
Yeah, it's been really hard in Australia, especially. I should have mentioned that when you asked me that question. So I've been a teacher the whole time I've run Grail Games, but in different amounts of hours each week. So currently I am full-time till the end of the year, this year, but next year I'll be 3 days, I think it looks like. So I do enough work with Grail Games that it is a full-time job, but I don't make the money or have the time to call it that. It's really a part-time thing I do on the side at nights and weekends. But it will be great next year to be back to doing it 1 or 2 days a week in the week as well. Will it ever be full-time? I hope so. I think so. There's certainly enough work for that. But I don't want to sound depressing and cynical, but because the people we all know and love in the gaming community are full-time, I think many of us think that the board gaming industry is bigger than it is. When we go to a convention, it looks freaking huge, but all these people go back home and they go back to their jobs and, their real jobs. We're not quite there. We're still a young industry, really, in that regard, especially in Australia. Look, you can do it. You can become full-time, but don't have the needs that I have. I've got kids. I live in Sydney where the average house price is like $1.5 million. I can't go full-time, but someone else could have. But I personally couldn't with Grail Games. And I think we'll get there, definitely. But it might not be for another year or two yet. We'll see.
So your last game then is Gipf. Are you a big fan of abstracts?
I love abstracts. If I could sleep with them under my pillow, I would. That was weird. Okay, really but weird, I really do like them. I love them, in fact. I said that. Yeah, I love them. I think they're fantastic. They just do something in my head that other games don't. I mean, I think most people, and I always hate saying that because I don't know what people have had in their lives, but I think most people that live like me have probably played chess and drafts and all these other abstract games. And the modern abstracts, though, that the hobby game industry has designed, wow, they are just amazing. And I have to take an abstract game with me in the car to this cabin thing because abstracts are games that, good abstracts, have a page of rules but a lifetime of mastery ahead of you. They're just so deep, so clever. You can explore different ways to play with just black and white pieces and a few simple rules, and it just amazes me how someone like, is it Chris Berm who designed the Gipf series?
That's right.
I hope that's right. How he does it, I have no idea. I love every game in the series except for Punk'd, and but I like that one. And if you ask me, is Gipf my favorite, or is this the best? It would depend on the day. I think my favorites are, I don't know if these words mean anything to anyone, this list, but these things I'm about to say are actual game names. Tamsk, Devon, Gipf, they're probably my 3 favorite. But I chose Gipf for this list because to someone who's only played drafts or checkers and things like that, it looks like that. And the rules are similar in that you're moving pieces along on this sort of, not checkerboard thing, but it's similar. And I think there's enough there in Gipf for me personally that I would be happy to spend hours and hours playing it over and over again, trying to figure out some strategies. I don't want to talk a lot about this because I could seriously talk for hours about how much I love abstracts. I could give you a list. There's so many that I love. I just picked one. Gipf was it. I think it's great. But get anything in the Gipf series, and if you like abstracts, you won't be disappointed.
I mean, do they stand up against chess against Go? Are they as good?
I think if Gipf, Devon Yinch, all these games were designed 1,000 years ago, they would be the chess. They would be the thing that kids join clubs to master. It's just sad for them that they were designed in the 20th and 21st century where abstracts don't get much of a say. But they're that good. If you like that sort of thing, these are amazing.
So I got one question then. So you're heading out of Sydney. You're going past the Sydney cricket ground where England previously had lifted the ashes. You're heading up to the caravan park on the Gold Coast, and you go around a corner and 4 of the games fly out, down a ravine, into a billabong and are swept away for all eternity. Which game do you hope is sitting on the backseat of the car?
Are you sure you've never been to Australia? That was pretty good.
Timey kangaroo down sport.
Okay, yeah. You've painted the picture. So what would I grab? Was that your question?
Which game do you hope is after 4 of the games have flown out, which game do you hope is sitting on the backseat of the car? Well,
I've got an advantage because I said it was the big box edition, but the Kingdom Builder box will be easiest to grab, I think, and I'd adore to have that forever. I know the Mad Magazine game I said was going for sentimental reasons, but to take this in the right spirit, if I'm going to be playing these games a lot, Kingdom Builder's the one I'd want to take.
So if people want to get hold of you, if they want to see what Grail Games are up to, all of that sort of thing, how would they go about doing that?
If they want to, I'm not sure. So there's grailgames.com.au. That's a website. That we've got Grail Games on Twitter, Grail Games on Instagram, Grail Games on Board Game Geek. There is Grail Games on Facebook as well. You might not find me there, but there is that too. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, David Harding, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been fun.
You can support the show in many ways. You can tell your friends. You can talk about it on social media. You can talk about it on your own blog, podcast or video. Or you can support it directly by going to patreon.com/5G4D for a rolling donation, or for a one-off donation, hitting the PayPal link at the bottom of the website, 5gamesfordoomsday.com. It's these donations that keep the show going. Also, if you want to say something nice about the show, or if you want to say something horrible about the show, you can contact me on Twitter at 5gamesfordoomsday, or send me an email at 5gamesfordoomsday@gmail.com. And if I've managed to tiptoe away from the sentience and the rum and raisin lice cream, I'll see you in 2 weeks for another 5 Games for Doomsday.